Hi, my name is Kiera, and this is Kiera of All Trades on Fresh Factory TV. Today we are discussing the podcast production positions, the first of which is a voiceover artist. What is a voiceover artist? A voiceover artist is one of the first people that you hear at the beginning, in sometimes in the middle of an advertisement, the person who introduces a show, the person who sometimes uses their voice in different octaves in order to represent a character. In general, it is a person who is like an actor, who is an actor, but instead of using their body, they use their voice. So a voiceover artist is the person that you hear making the introduction to a show, a person who is making an announcement at the baseball game, but it's the same job. So a voiceover artist is one of the very first people that you hear in a podcast because they make the introduction that you hear right before the show comes on and that you remember. So every time the show comes on, when you're flipping through, you know that that's the show that you're looking for because you know that voice and it represents the beginning of the show that you're looking for. So voiceover artists. Voiceover artists are very important. Next, the show has to have a host. Now, some shows have interviews with others, they're interview shows. Some shows are just the hosts that are speaking to the audience. But in any case, the host has a very important role to play. So the host is the voice of the business or the show or the whatever. The point is that the host is giving the guidance, it's answering the questions, the host is asking the questions, and the host is what a audience would say is the representative of the business or the show. So it automatically has to be a person that is able to build rapport with either the audience members or people that they interview because that is the job. A host is the person who leads the audience and the interviewees through the concept of the topics in a defined manner so that they can get through all the questions or get through all the topics in a timely manner, and also is able to get all of the information that needs to be either asked or given completed before the show is over. So it is super important to have a host that is able to represent the show well and is able to be a level of consistency so that the audience always knows who to look for. So, host. A host is the next job on our podcast production positions, one of which is the most important. Next, if you, for instance, have an interview show where you'll need to coordinate interviews with people, get on each other's schedules, review questions, there'll need to be a person that's in contact with both sides who can schedule those things. In a professional manner, if it's a set aside position, the position would be an outreach manager. So this person works kind of as an admin where they are able to coordinate schedules between both parties in order to actually schedule things like pre-interviews, to actually schedule the interview itself, to be able to get contact information from both sides, to be able to exchange questions, get things like the headshot of the interviewee, to get any kind of business information coordinated to the show. So an outreach manager is able to get all of the nuts and bolts in place for for the interview to happen with the host and the rest of the follow-up to be done without a hitch. The host can only do so much, so the outreach manager would be able to do that. So outreach manager, it is the person that is responsible for prospecting new guests, getting their contact information, starting a conversation with them, pitching the offer of the interview, and also following up on scheduling. Very important. Next, you will have a writer slash editor, or a writer and an editor. A writer or an editor can both be yourself, whomever the person is that's starting the podcast. You can have individuals that are just freelance writers. You can have a friend, a family member, somebody who's real good at talking English to do those things for you. But there's also people who are available to do those works as contractors. There are people online who can proofread your work. But what you want this person to do is to be able to create very catchy headlines for all of the titles of the different podcasts. You want to find very cool names so that they're click worthy. You want someone who can integrate some write-ups and captions on each of the social media posts that are to be written about the different episodes. And sometimes you'd like for them to be able to write the questions if it's an interview, to even be able to give some follow-up details to what the host and the interviewee will be able to discuss. A person who is just overall responsible with communication in a written form. So that is a writer slash editor, two or one person that is very important to the podcast production team. Next, obviously, there has to be some content, so we have to either have a photographer or a videographer. Some of the most well-known YouTubers, well-known podcasters do all of these things themselves. But as the obligations get bigger with the business that goes along with having a podcast that has any level of success, then these tasks end up getting divvied out, even if the podcaster themselves is able to photograph or videograph the actual content, someone has to edit it. So a photographer slash videographer is a person that is responsible for recording audio or video, period. But they also create these well-lit angles to be able to show things in the best way, the brightest way possible, so that the audience will be able to get a good representation of what they need to see. And the photography portion is, again, even if it is the person doing it themselves, they are a person who is capable of catching good angles, taking a variety of photos in order to have photos to choose from that are representative of the topic of the day or representative of the show in general, in order to have things like thumbnails for the front of videos, or any type of headline catching posts for social media. They will need those things in addition to the actual content. They will need those photos and shorts or reels to go along with it in order to advertise the show. Next, so after we've recorded this content and had these great pictures taken, somebody has to fix them. So the likelihood that someone is going to record and photograph 100% accuracy of exactly what you are to see as the audience is pretty low. So having a good audio or video engineer is great. So the next person on our list is an audio video engineer. Sometimes there are two people, sometimes it's the same person, and a lot of people use online contractors to do this. They will capture the video and then send it out via email or on some type of online cloud service to exchange the videos or the audio, and have someone to clean it up, post production, meaning after it's already been recorded, and then to clean it up. So they get rid of all the weird things like the long silences, and a whole lot of times when I'm saying then someone is in post production is removing those things so that I sound a little bit smarter than I might actually be. So, an audio slash video engineer is another very important position in podcast production. Next, the person that everyone knows and loves without knowing is the graphic designer. So, a graphic designer is in touch with almost every point in a podcast production. There is a thumbnail that is being created, but there are general pictures and graphic productions that are being made for almost every part in a podcast. So, what does the logo look like? That is the representation of the podcast. So, who came up with the colors? Who decided what all of it should seem like to the audience? That is the graphic designer. So the graphic designer is the person who creates the overall look for the podcast in its many different platforms. So again, a graphic designer is a person who is going to do things like take those specific headlines that was written by the editor, and they're going to put it into a thumbnail. They're going to create pictures. They're going to create graphics. They're going to have certain templates that show you who was on the show and take some cool quotes from it and making it to a picture that they can post on social media. Maybe even take some of these very cool pictures and make it into different merch that can be sold. A graphic designer sees life through pictures, and they use that skill to help give a visual representation to the public of your podcast. So a graphic designer is a very, very important person on the podcast production team. Next, in the background, there are tons of administrative tasks that are going on. There are lots of platforms that need to be set up in order to have a podcast that once it's produced goes somewhere. So there are the need to have new accounts on the different podcast distribution platforms, the Apple Podcasts and the Google Play. And then what do they do with the video? There's also going to be, the YouTubes, and there's going to be all the places that videos play and wherever else you want ads to go. So those administrative tasks need to be taken care of by someone, and they're not necessarily creative tasks. They're not necessarily, things that are needed for a person to have all these extra stellar skills, but a person who can get the job done in a consistent manner is required, because these things don't distribute themselves. So you do need someone who can handle administrative tasks like ensuring that all of the posts go out for social media or they're scheduled, that make sure that each of the episodes is able to be distributed and put out, to make sure that all of the things are followed through with, the scheduling is done so that there actually is an episode or a person to record on the episode. So yes, having a person that is able to be responsible for those administrative tasks is very important. So an administrator is very important. Sometimes people do it themselves, but an administrator is the person who handles all the administrative tasks that are required to get a show produced and sent. And a producer is the person who is the unsung hero of the whole gang, who is basically the boss of a production. So it can be that a producer is a title that covers any kind of outlet. So it can be a producer of a show, it can be a producer of a ballet, it can be a producer of a podcast. But the term producer is a person that is responsible for both financial and managerial aspects of a broadcast. So that means that they are the people placement professionals, making sure that all of the correct people are in place to do the work, to get the show done and produced and sent out. They also make sure that all of the people who are in place play well together, that everyone knows their responsibility, and when there's a question, this is the person that will be able to answer. And ultimately, the producer is the person who is ultimately accountable for publishing each new episode at the frequency of which the podcast host or creator decides to produce it. So, yes, those are some very important positions to hold if you or anyone that you know is thinking about producing a podcast. That production team is going to be very, very beneficial. But what happens after you produce the podcast? So how did it make money? Well, it didn't make money yet. All you did was spend a bunch of money and a lot of time to create the content and put it out. And now you have a team that did that. But each time you'll have to have some other things that are going to, one, bring to light the fact that there even is an episode. So a social media manager is going to be the next very important podcast production position. And a social media manager is just that. It is a person who can manage the output of social media on many outlets, many platforms, with the use of schedulers, either by creating original content or taking things like basic templates that are created by the graphic designer and remixing them, being able to add captions, but to ensure ultimately that there are social media posts being put out on the correct platform for the type of content it is, and also to do the most important thing, which is to find out how well each of those posts are performing and to find out if that can be improved. So, yes, a social media manager is by far one of the most important people on the podcast production team because they will have a very good grip on who is being told that there is a podcast to watch, and they will be able to hopefully build up a following by using social media appropriately. So, yes, what you have to find out is what all do you want this podcast to do once you have it going. So you have established a whole team that's going to be able to put it out, put it together, and now you're wanting for it to make money, but you had to build up the audience. So you used your social media manager to do that. But you have your host and you have all your other people together that are raring to go. But how does money get made on a podcast? So some of the ways that money gets made with a podcast is that you sell subscriptions. So this would be a person that be required to do that. So if you want to do things like sell subscriptions or ads or any of those things, then you would need someone that was in public relations. You would need someone that is an advertisement agent in order to assist that your podcast get their following seen or get their following increase by being able to be seen with the use of advertisements. So sometimes those advertising networks have advertising technicians that would be able to place your show in the correct location with other groups that offer advertisement that can bring more eyes onto your show, that can bring ad dollars. So what they do is they place people that have podcasts, that have different shows with a company that is looking to sell ads. So if you are, they're like a matchmaker. They're like a matchmaker. They put your show together with a company that wants to run ads, who is looking to show their ads to your target audience, the people who are watching your show. So yes, this would either be an advertising technician, or this would be a marketing person, but these are going to be very important people to be on the podcast production team. And these are positions that will probably be held by third party companies. But in order for a podcast to make money, these positions are very important, even if they are being filled by third party companies, and that's their only job, is just to fill out the ads portion. Also, another way that some of our most favoritist podcasts make money is that they sell merch. So there is a bit of fashion design in this portion, because as we know, fashion designers design fashion, and sometimes designing fashion is a way that a podcast can create things that the audience wants to buy. So sometimes the merch is a t-shirt, sometimes the merch is a actual piece of clothing, sometimes their merch is a backpack, sometimes the merch is, as in merch means merchandise, so a merchandiser is also another person that is on the podcast production team that would be able to assist in ensuring that there's money to be made. So if you got the podcast made and you have an audience that's watching it, and then you have someone on the back end who's helping put you together with a company that has ads to run, and they're an advertisement technician, or they're doing advertisement with a third party company, now you have things that you need to sell on your own. Now you can start selling things to your own audience that you've built up. But how do you get those things designed? So you would have to have a person with a merchandising background to be able to help you figure out, where can you take your wares? Where can you take your merchandise? So a merchandiser is a person who can help you to distribute your merchandise or place it in a way that the consumer would be more likely to purchase it. So is this person going to help you set up your online shop? Are you going to be a podcast slash e-commerce brand? Maybe. Are you going to go do talks in real life, and you are also going to have a booth or a table that has your merchandise available? Well, this merchandiser is going to help you to be able to place your items in a way that is going to be easy on the eyes and very heavy to the pocketbook if it's on your side. And a person who specializes in merchandising will be able to help you. Next, there is another portion that is happening in the background. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but probably your favorite YouTuber has gone from your favorite YouTuber to a TEDx speak or something like that. So now they are a paid speaker, and the person who is getting them onto these different speaking platforms is either a booking agent or a manager. So what you hope for is that your podcast gets you from, just in front of a few faces to millions of faces. And as your face or your show becomes more popular, what you're hoping is that people want to see you in different places. So a booking agent is a person who is responsible for getting you booked. This person has a clear understanding about what type of audience you can pull in. They have a good grip of the number of people who watch your show, and then they're able to take this information and pivot it and pitch it to other venues that would like a person who is, again, already comfortable speaking. They've been doing this, probably the host, right? And they're able to take this information that they're already giving on a smaller platform and maybe giving them a speaking engagement where they can speak live in front of an audience. So that booking agent would be a person to do that. They take their communications with you, they match it with the communications that they have with the third party, and they put them together for a fee so that the person who is making online content is now not just making online content, they now become a speaker or is able to host events. So the person that is able to manage that schedule and put those two things together is called a booking agent. So, yes, there are many more opportunities to be able to make money as a podcaster. But first, you have to be consistent in creating the podcast. So, there was lots of positions that needed to be filled, whether it's friends and family, whether it is contractors that are being paid to do all of these jobs. The main thing is that it needs to be done. Podcast needs to be out on a consistent basis, and you need to have a consistent voice to show exactly what it is that you are giving information about or what topics you're covering so that people know what to expect. But there's one more part in the back of the podcast production team that probably doesn't get taken care of that often, that consistently. So I'm going to bring it up. But anytime that there is a show, especially ones where they interview people, the host and the people who are getting interviewed always want to do business together. But a lot of times, if both parties are very busy, they just don't have the time. So they can have lots of desire, but what they really need is a facilitator. So a facilitator is a person or a company like Fresh Factory Inc. in this instance, where we would put two groups together that want to do business and we take care of the details that need to be taken care of in order for it to happen. So a facilitator is going to be in the know about what all needs to be done and then actually get it done so that those two parties can do business together if they so choose, so that those great ideas that they came up with on the podcast don't go to waste, so that there are no missing steps to what could happen to progress both of the groups that decided to participate in the podcast together. So, yes, a facilitator. A facilitator is a person or a group of people who assist in filling out all the missing pieces to make sure that an agreement to do business can be fulfilled. So, yes, we have reviewed lots of positions that are super important in podcast production. The main thing is if you're going to produce a podcast, just know that it's a lot harder than it looks. Lots of things need to be done and consistently. So if you can get past the inconsistent nature that we as humans have, you are off to a great start. If you can find some friends and family that are willing to help you, you're off to an even better start. And if you're willing to dedicate a few dollars to some contractors to make sure that you get a quality product out on a consistent basis, you will be miles and miles ahead of many of the people who have started and stopped on their road of podcast production. So that's it. My name is Kiera. This is Kiera of All Trades on Fresh Factory TV. On YouTube, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We really appreciate you coming to the show. If you're watching us on Amazon Fire TV or Roku, please be sure to subscribe. Come back every Sunday at 7 p.m. If you're watching us anywhere else in the nation on cable television, hi. Please feel free to visit us on www.freshfactory.com. Watch all of our old episodes. It's really great to have you. We're looking forward to building up our community. And as we go forward, we're going to take you on this journey with us. Thank you so much for your time. Have a very nice day, afternoon, or evening. Bye.